The quite unexpected news this weekend that ABC News would settle a defamation suit with President-elect Trump and pay him $15 million had the president-elect licking his chops today at a press conference, talking about the prospects he imagines for going after more media outlets. He said he plans to sue somebody, I don't know, the people of Iowa, their newspaper. It wasn't totally clear. He plans to sue someone over a poll late in the election season that showed Trump doing well in, Trump not doing as well as he did in Iowa. Since he eventually won Iowa, he thinks that's grounds for a lawsuit because that poll said he might lose it. The especially hairy thing that he said today was that actually he shouldn't have to bring suits like this himself. He expects that the Justice Department, the U.S. Department of Justice, should bring lawsuits like this on his behalf. The dynamic that's emerging for the second Trump term is not just that powerful people want to be able to use their own power to harass their perceived critics. It's that the new president-elect expects that he will be able to use not just his own power and influence, but he will be able to use the U.S. government to harass and punish his critics. And it's not just the Justice Department he plans to use. Today, the outgoing chair of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, responded again to Trump's demands that the FCC should strip licenses from a news network that made him mad. The outgoing chair said, quote, "The FCC has no business threatening to take away broadcast licenses because the president doesn't like the content or coverage on a network." Ahead of the election, Trump talked about using the U.S. military domestically to target Americans who oppose him or protest against him, the so-called enemy from within. Now he's reportedly planning on creating a new board overseeing promotions and senior officers in the U.S. military, which would allow him to purge military leadership of anybody who is disloyal to him or who disagrees with him or who has different politics. Trump and his allies are also reportedly considering withholding federal money from states or cities that don't go along with plans like his mass deportation idea. It feels like a lot because it is a lot and it's happening all at once. But how do local governments and news organizations and ordinary citizens think strategically about this when Trump is threatening and saying he expects to use the most powerful government on earth against its own citizens to attack his critics? What can your mayor or your governor or your local paper or some voluntary organization you might be part of do to stand up against that in a time like this? Just the person to ask. Joining us now is Anthony Romero, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union. Anthony, it's really nice to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Great to see you. Great to see you.
Having you and Tim Snyder here on the same night feels to me like I won the lottery. I really appreciate you being
it's great. It was great to be with you.
Tell me about how you at the ACLU are thinking about your plans to try to defend American civil liberties in this term versus the first term.
Well, we've been planning for almost a year. We were anticipating the possibility that he would win this election. So we've spent thousands of staff hours studying Project 2025, tracking the campaign promises, going back and playing back what happened in Trump 1.0 to see what might happen with Trump 2.0. And so we've been trying to get ready for this whole period of time. We can't run the same playbook. They're going to be more aggressive. They're smarter. They're faster off the block. They are really they're running the gauntlet on many of the policy issues that they didn't dare try last time. They're going to run the ball down the field. And so we have to be much smarter and much better prepared. Litigation is going to be key. The courts still are a place where we have to turn to. We have to be wide-eyed that the courts are also increasingly conservative, and he will appoint new judges onto the courts. It's also true that Biden appointed a record number of judges on the courts, and so not all is lost. But good lawyers are going to have to earn their pay by picking the right clients, the right cases, the right theories. Where do you file? Where do you settle? Where do you really push the envelope? And that's what really we're working through right now.
When you talk to regular Americans who aren't lawyers, who aren't people who are engaged in this fight in a practical, paid to do it as part of their job kind of way, and you hear people feeling intimidated, feeling overwhelmed by the pace at which we're getting sort of alarming news about the extremism of their plans. What do you tell them about the prospects for holding line?
Well, local governments, the state attorneys general, the governors, the mayors, we have this whole plan around a firewall for freedom, we call it. The idea that these local officials can really play an important role in stopping the worst of the government abuses.
How so?
Well, for instance, when they're going to try to detain and deport all these hundreds of thousands, up to 1 million people, that's an operation that they have the legal power to do the raids, but the logistics. And they're going to need mayors and governors or city councils to either give them access to police officers or not, jails. Where are you going to house all these folks? Right? And so part of what we're doing is we're preparing executive orders and we're organizing our folks to put pressures on elected officials so they don't roll over. They should sever these relationships they have with the federal government on immigration enforcement. They should make sure that our prisons and our jails are off limits. They should begin to think about what actions they could take to pardon immigrants who have a criminal record because they drove on a suspended license. Well, let's take them out of harm's way.
They could do that now.
Let's commute.
They could do that now in the transition.
Yes. And so part of what we got to do is we got to swarm our allies in some of these places. And even in red states, you have some blue mayors. And so there's a whole game plan for this. And I think part of what we're trying to do is breaking it down, what can be done by the courts and lawyers, what can be done by citizens, what can governors do, what can mayors do, and really have a game plan for that.
When people look at the fact that there haven't been large-scale protests thus far the way there were pretty soon after the election in 2016, I tend to look at that and think the American people are smart. People are marshaling their resources.
They're waiting.
Choosing for the right moment.
Exactly.
Do you see it the same way, or
Totally.
do you see it's okay?
When he starts deporting all these folks, ripping apart communities, the idea that you're never going to be able to move that many people through the immigration system without ripping apart citizens and immigrants. It's going to rip the basic fiber of our lives. And that's when people are going to say, oh, that's not what we bargained for. And we got to turn out.
Anthony Romero, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union. There's a lot on your shoulders, my friend. Thank you for being here.
I have a lot of friends helping me.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.